Institutionalization is internationally recognized as a form of children's human rights abuse. But do you even know what it is? Around the world, 8 million children suffer in orphanages, barred from the love and affection that parents usually offer. Without loving care, children's brains are unable to develop freely and with ease. They will lack the capacity to empathize and give affection themselves, causing psychological damage. And once these children are released from their orphanage into the outside world, they will be unprepared and uneducated, placing them in a position to be further abused and make poor decisions. It all began here, because of this guy. Joseph Stalin staged a brutal campaign to eliminate all his possible political opponents in an effort to guarantee control over his people. It is known today as the Great Purge. During this time, the parents of 10 million children were either arrested, executed, or sent to work in Siberian gulags. When the now orphaned children were not claimed by their relatives, they were placed in state-run orphanages. Stalin's Great Purge terrorized the population so that they also turned against those who spoke out against his regime, known as the enemies of the people. In effect, the children of the enemies of the people were stigmatized as well, placing them in a position to be abused in the orphanages for years to come. Fast forward to present day. The rate of institutionalization in the post-Soviet bloc is the greatest in the world, with 66 children out of every 100,000 living in residential care, which is over 5 times the global average. This is at least 1.3 million total institutionalized children in the post-Soviet area. And most of these children have parents. 98% of children in orphanages in the former Soviet area have at least one living parent. But why would parents leave their children? Several factors play a part: poverty, natural disaster, and disability. When a parent is in a dire financial situation, they might send their child to an orphanage out of desperation, knowing that they will be fed, and intending to claim the child again when they are financially stable. However, this is often not the case, as it is rare that the parent will come out of poverty. Similarly, when natural disaster hits, children could be displaced or sent to orphanages by desperate parents, believing that their children will be cared for. However, as with the case of poverty, it is rare that families will be reunited. The last leading cause is disability. In some cases, 60% of institutionalized children are disabled. Parents may not have the money or resources to care for disabled children, so their only option is institutional care. What exactly is bad about orphanages? Here is a real-life example. Meet Katie.
At 9, Katie couldn't talk, walk, or stand. These are images of a girl left to die. Yes, this is the same girl, just a year and a half after the photos you've just seen. What happened? Something that rarely happens for these children. Katie was taken out of the institution. Her caretakers would say that it was because of her disabilities that Katie just couldn't grow. However, after a year and a half at home, due to adequate care from her US adoptive family, Katie's weight more than tripled. Most of her health problems were caused by starvation and neglect, and she was saved by love. Emotionally, Katie was very damaged from being left alone in a crib from the time she was born until she was nearly 10 years old. She could not bear direct eye contact. She could not stand being moved, touched, or held, and would begin to moan and bite on her wrists in her distress. This is all very different now. She now loves being loved.
Unfortunately, stories like Katie's are often unheard of, as most of the children are not adopted and saved from the life that Katie was subject to in the institution. It is true that healthcare is below standard, nutrition is lacking, and that children do not experience loving interaction and care. Parents are able to develop meaningful relationships with their child through interaction. However, in an institution, there is not nearly enough staff to look over every child the amount a parent could to develop these relationships. So institutionalized children do not feel like they're being cared for by someone who truly cares for them, or might not even recognize that it is possible to feel love. Because of this, institutionalized children are 6 times more likely to be abused, 10 times more likely to be involved in prostitution, 40 times more likely to have a criminal record, and 500 times more likely to commit suicide. This is not to mention the inadequate healthcare, education, and nutrition these children receive, along with the abuse and stigmatization they face. It is truly difficult to comprehend that over 8 million children live in these conditions around the world. Clearly, institutionalization is a big problem, but how do we solve it? In order to solve this problem, orphanages should be replaced with community-based services such as foster care, adoption, or family-style living homes, which are not only beneficial to the children, they are cheaper to run. But this problem is not as easily solved as it sounds. As is evident, the vast majority of people in this world are not even aware of this problem. This lack of awareness makes it difficult for governments to pass legislation to prevent institutionalization, as they do not have the support or might not even be aware of the problem. To make matters worse, corruption is often present in orphanages as well.
It is often the case in the developed world that orphanages, so-called orphanages, are run as businesses, and that effectively children are trafficked for profit.
That was J.K. Rowling, founder of the nonprofit organization Lumos, working to eradicate orphanages. J.K. Rowling goes on to explain that often orphanages are run by corrupt businessmen who exploit children to gain profit. Since governments allocate budget to orphanages and millions of dollars of foreign donations and aid go to them, orphanages can be a money-making hotspot. These corrupt businesses hinder the government's ability to deinstitutionalize, since the presumably wealthy and influential people who maintain the orphanages can manipulate governments for making changes to the system. Thankfully, progress has been made in the past 20 years. The European Union passed ex-ante 9.1 of the European Structural and Investment Fund regulations in 2013, which requires countries to use EU funds to remove institutions and replace them with community-based services. UNICEF has also actively researched institutionalization since 2000 and has published many reports on it. Not to mention the numerous NGOs working in this field to spread awareness, such as Save the Children, Hope and Homes for Children, and Lumos. To conclude, institutionalization is a significant and largely unheard of problem for the people of the former Soviet Union. Children in orphanages are mistreated, neglected, and they are deprived of their right to a loving childhood. Though a lot will need to be done to eradicate this form of child abuse, we are on the path towards a future where children will not have to suffer in orphanages.